What are some different ways that you can stay motivated when working on long-term tasks? Hello, my name is Courtney. I'm a high school software engineer that has leveled up my methods of productivity. And today we're going to go into what are some ways that I personally use to stay motivated, especially when it comes to working on long-term tasks. Before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe down below because this video is jam-packed full of tips that you can use in your life to help make yourself way more productive and make your motivation last longer. Now, if I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of iffy about saying motivation because motivation is always going to be fleeting. It's actually what you need is discipline to stay consistent with whatever goals you have set for yourself. But if we're not really going off of semantics here, these are the different things that I would do to stay motivated. Number one, break it down into manageable tasks. Everybody's heard the saying, you cannot eat an elephant at once. You need to break it down into bite-sized pieces. Now take that scenario and put it into whatever project you have for yourself. If I want to make a full-blown personal website, specifically more like a portfolio, first I need to break it down into different manageable tasks. I need to design it, decide what language I'm going to code it in, decide what APIs I want to implement within this code, decide what projects I want to showcase in this website, what am I going to host it on, and so on and so forth. By dividing your project into small, achievable milestones, it builds the momentum and it keeps the motivation flowing, ultimately helping you achieve whatever goal you set for yourself in a shorter amount of time. The next tip I have is create a realistic timeline for your project. Now this timeline, of course, needs to be built with milestones talked about earlier in tip number one, but by giving yourself a visual, what do you need to complete, kind of like a checklist in a sense, it can really help you stay more productive. And it can also make sure you are completing the different features and functions that you want to complete for whatever tasks or projects you have set for yourself. By creating a timeline, it helps you set deadlines for different tasks that you want to complete for the ultimate completion of this long-term project. The next tip I have is set a clear visualization for your end goal. What are you trying to achieve? What is your end product? What do you want it to look like? This is kind of where I said earlier, if I want to make a personal portfolio, I first need to kind of do the graphic design elements of it. What do I want it to look like? Now take that and put it into whatever instance you are trying to do for your life. Make sure that you have a clear goal for yourself. Make sure it is specific enough, but not too specific because things change obviously, but make sure it is specific enough and reasonable enough for you to be able to achieve. The next tip I have is to set regular review points. Now, in my personal opinion, reviewing is just as important as planning, because when you are reviewing and looking back on different aspects of your project, you are making sure that A, everything is being done correctly, and B, you are able to make alterations if things can be done more efficiently. I personally do this when it comes to my finances, which I kind of talk about in my financial goals. For me personally, in my life, I know I want to save X amount of money for my primary savings account. In me doing that, I went through and I watched every single dollar that left my bank account, and I saw how much money I'm spending on this and how much money I'm spending on that. Setting regular review points in your long-term project, you are able to exponentially improve productivity. And of course, like I said earlier, you are able to make sure everything is done properly. The next tip I have is to establish a routine. Now this depends on what kind of project you are trying to complete, but ultimately routines help drive success because it is not motivation that really makes success, it is consistency and discipline. So by having a good routine, you are really able to set yourself up for success and you're able to achieve whatever small goals you have, which will ultimately feed into the long-term goal in the long run. The next tip I have is to find accountability partners. Now this too is a bit dependent on what your long-term project is, but by having people come in and check on you and make sure that you are staying consistent with your goals, you are able to really level up your productivity and hold yourself accountable in some situations where you may not have been able to previously do that. I know for me personally, I have friends and family check up on me on my different goals to make sure that I am still staying consistent with those goals. The next tip I have is to stay flexible. Long-term goals can be extremely difficult, especially because they are long-term. Things happen, life changes, and obstacles are always going to be thrown in the path for whatever you're trying to complete. So because of that, make sure you are staying flexible and adaptable with whatever goal you are trying to set for yourself. And remember, even though we are creating a timeline and you should try your best to stick to the timeline, things happen and it is okay for you to make slight adjustments here and there. The next and final tip I have is to avoid perfectionism. Now this really matters to me because as somebody that used to consider themselves a perfectionist, which I no longer do because that's not me anymore, but some people still consider themselves perfectionists, and I just want you to recognize perfectionism is not the method you need to use when it comes to any projects in your life, but especially not long-term ones, because like I said earlier, long-term ones, things are thrown in the mix, life changes, challenges occur, and because of that, being a perfectionist will only hold you back. It can ultimately just lead to you failing your project just because you feel like it's not good enough. Now, this mentality is very pessimistic, and it is not a good thing for you to establish in your life when it comes to trying to complete any goal you set for yourself, especially not long-term ones. You need to understand that it is okay for you to keep moving forward, even if they are small, tiny steps and not large strides towards perfectionism. It's okay to make mistakes. That's completely normal. But yes, those are the different tips that I have for you achieving long-term success and holding motivation on as you complete these long-term projects that you've set for yourself. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any tips that you can share with the family about achieving long-term success, comment it down below. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Quartz Corner.